The restaurant was perfect. Dim lighting, soft jazz playing in the background, and a corner table with a view of the city skyline. I had spent weeks planning this night, meticulously orchestrating every detail to surprise Anna. It was our 10th wedding anniversary, and I wanted to remind her, and maybe myself, why we had chosen each other all those years ago. The maitre d' led us to our table, where a bouquet of her favorite lilies waited. Anna smiled when she saw them, but it didn't reach her eyes. I brushed it off, telling myself she was just tired. After all, life had been hectic lately, long hours at work for both of us, and not enough time to really connect. As we sat down, I reached for her hand, hoping to spark some of the warmth that felt like it had been missing. "Happy anniversary, Anna," I said softly. She gave a small nod, her gaze fixed on the flickering candle between us. "Happy anniversary," she murmured, her voice distant. A waiter appeared with a bottle of champagne I had pre-ordered. "To 10 years," I said, raising my glass. She clinked hers against mine, but there was no enthusiasm behind it. The knot in my stomach tightened. The evening unfolded awkwardly. I tried to engage her in conversation, reminiscing about our early years together, but her responses were clipped, her attention elsewhere. When dessert arrived, a decadent chocolate mousse with "Happy Anniversary" scripted in gold frosting, I saw her glance at her phone, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. "Anna," I said, my tone more serious than I intended. "What's going on?" She hesitated, setting down her spoon. "James, there's something I need to tell you." My heart sank. Those words never preceded anything good. "I've been seeing someone else," she said, her voice unnervingly calm. "And I'm leaving you. For Mark." It took me a moment to process the words. Mark. My cousin. My blood. My best man at our wedding. The betrayal hit like a sledgehammer, knocking the air out of my lungs. I stared at her, searching her face for any sign of regret, any flicker of the woman I thought I knew. But she looked resolute, almost relieved to have said it out loud. "Mark," I repeated, the name tasting bitter on my tongue. "You're leaving me for Mark." She nodded, finally meeting my gaze. "He's the man I deserve." The words stung more than I could have imagined. They weren't just a declaration of betrayal. They were an indictment, a claim that I wasn't enough. My mind raced, replaying moments from our marriage, searching for signs I had missed, clues to how we had ended up here. But instead of exploding in anger or breaking down in despair, I felt an unexpected wave of calm wash over me. It wasn't resignation, it was clarity. I took a deep breath, letting her words settle. "Well," I said quietly, "if that's how you feel, Anna, then I won't stand in your way." She blinked, clearly startled by my response. "That's it? You're not going to fight for this?" "Why would I fight for someone who's already decided to leave?" I asked, my voice steady. "You've made your choice, and now I'll make mine." She opened her mouth to respond but seemed to think better of it. Instead, she looked down at her plate, a flicker of discomfort crossing her face. I stood, pulling out my wallet and placing enough cash on the table to cover the bill. Then, to her surprise, I leaned down and kissed her cheek, a gesture more symbolic than affectionate. "Goodbye, Anna," I said softly. "I hope Mark is everything you think he is." As I walked out of the restaurant, the cold night air hit me like a slap, and the weight of what had just happened began to sink in. My wife, the woman I had loved, trusted, and built a life with, had chosen my cousin over me. But instead of letting the pain consume me, I felt a spark of determination ignite deep within. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something new. When I got home, the house felt eerily quiet. Anna's things were still there, but they already felt like relics of a life I no longer recognized. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat in the living room, staring at the photos on the mantel. Our wedding day, vacations, milestones. Each one felt like a lie now, a facade covering the cracks that had been there all along. But as the hours passed, the anger and sadness began to shift. Beneath the hurt was a growing sense of resolve. Anna might have shattered the life we had built, but she hadn't shattered me. I was still standing, and I wasn't going to let this betrayal define me. As the first light of dawn crept through the windows, I made a silent vow to myself. I would rebuild. I would find purpose in the wreckage and create a life that wasn't defined by her or anyone else. The James who had walked into that restaurant the night before was gone. In his place was someone stronger, someone who had been tested and refused to break. And this was just the beginning. The days after Anna's confession were a blur. My once orderly life now felt like a shattered mirror, each jagged piece reflecting a different fragment of the man I used to be. Everywhere I looked, there were reminders of her. Our shared routines, her clothes hanging in the closet, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the bedroom. I spent the first few nights on the couch, unable to bring myself to sleep in my bed. It wasn't just the physical emptiness that got to me. It was the void left behind by her betrayal. But as the initial shock began to wear off, I realized something. I had a choice. I could let this break me, or I could rebuild. It started with small steps. I packed up her belongings, each item a bittersweet reminder of what we once had. The framed wedding photo on the mantel, into a box. The scarf she always forgot on the back of the dining chair, gone. With each item I removed, the house felt less like a mausoleum for our failed marriage and more like a blank canvas. Victor, my best friend since college, showed up unannounced one evening, a six-pack in one hand and a sympathetic smile on his face. "You didn't think I was going to let you wallow alone, did you?" he said, pushing his way inside. Victor had always been the kind of friend who knew when to push and when to just be present. That night, he did both. We sat on the porch, the cool night air wrapping around us as he listened to me unload everything. How I felt blindsided, how I couldn't stop replaying Anna's words, how I hated that Mark was the one she left me for. "Man, you gave her everything," Victor said, shaking his head, "and she couldn't see it. That's on her, not you." "I don't know," I said, staring at the beer bottle in my hand. "Maybe I missed the signs. Maybe I wasn't enough." "Bullshit," Victor snapped, his voice sharp but not unkind. "Don't you dare blame yourself for her selfish choices. You're a good man, James. You just gave your heart to someone who didn't deserve it." His words hit me harder than I expected, cutting through the fog of self-doubt that had been clouding my mind. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider the possibility that Victor was right, that Anna's betrayal wasn't a reflection of my worth, but of her own flaws. My sister, Sarah, was just as unwavering in her support. She called daily, her voice a lifeline on the days when the silence felt suffocating. "You've always been the strong one," she said during one of our conversations. "But even the strongest people need help sometimes. Don't be afraid to lean on us." Between Victor and Sarah, I started to feel less alone, less lost. Their belief in me was a reminder that I wasn't defined by Anna's actions. Slowly but surely, I began to pick up the pieces of my life, one deliberate step at a time. It was during one of those long, introspective nights that an idea began to form, a way to channel my pain into something meaningful. I thought back to the countless moments in my marriage when I had put Anna's needs above my own, sacrificing my dreams and passions to keep her happy. One dream in particular stood out: starting a program to help men navigate personal setbacks and rediscover their purpose. It was something I had talked about for years, but life, and my own self-doubt, had always gotten in the way. Now, with nothing holding me back, I felt a spark of determination ignite. I spent hours researching, sketching out ideas, and imagining what the program could look like. It wasn't just about helping others. It was about proving to myself that I could take this betrayal and turn it into something powerful. When I shared the idea with Victor, his reaction was immediate. "That's genius," he said, leaning forward in excitement. "You've been through hell, man, and if anyone knows how to come out the other side stronger, it's you. People need this." Sarah was just as enthusiastic. "You're turning pain into purpose," she said, her voice brimming with pride. I can't think of a better way to move forward. With their encouragement, I began laying the groundwork. I reached out to contacts in the mental health and nonprofit sectors, people who shared my vision for creating a safe space where men could find support and reclaim their lives. As the pieces started coming together, I noticed something shifting within me. The anger and sadness that had consumed me in the wake of Anna's betrayal began to give way to a sense of purpose. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was moving towards something instead of running from it. One evening, as I sat at my desk, poring over notes and plans, I glanced at the framed photo of my parents that I had moved to the center of the mantel. They had always taught me that strength wasn't about never falling. It was about getting back up. Looking at that photo, I made a silent promise. I wouldn't let Anna's betrayal define me. I would build something better, not just for myself, but for anyone who needed to know they weren't alone in their struggles. This was my turning point. The pieces of my life were still coming together, but for the first time, I felt like I was in control of the puzzle. The idea of turning my pain into purpose felt like a lifeline, something solid to hold on to in the chaos of rebuilding my life. Every day, I poured myself into planning the men's advocacy and mentorship program. It was more than just a project, it was a mission. I wanted to create a space where men like me could find support, strength, and a way forward. The first hurdle was finding funding. Starting something from scratch wasn't cheap, and while I was willing to invest my own savings, I knew it wouldn't be enough. That's when Victor suggested reaching out to Evelyn Harris, a philanthropist known for supporting mental health initiatives. She's tough but fair, Victor said as he handed me her contact information. If anyone can see the potential in this, it's her. I spent days preparing for the meeting, refining my pitch and gathering data on the need for programs like mine. On the day of the meeting, I arrived at Evelyn's office early, clutching a folder filled with notes and projections. Evelyn herself was every bit as formidable as Victor had described, sharp-eyed, impeccably dressed, and exuding a presence that commanded respect. She listened intently as I laid out my vision, her expression unreadable. "I want to help men rediscover their purpose after setbacks," I said, my voice steady despite the nerves bubbling beneath the surface. Too often, men are told to suck it up or be strong, without any real guidance on how to navigate their struggles. This program isn't about fixing anyone. It's about giving them the tools to rebuild. When I finished, Evelyn leaned back in her chair, her eyes studying me carefully. "You're passionate," she said, her tone measured. "But passion alone isn't enough. What makes you think you can pull this off?" I took a deep breath, meeting her gaze. "Because I've lived it," I said. "I know what it feels like to hit rock bottom, to question your worth, and to wonder if you'll ever feel whole again. And I know how much it means to have someone believe in you when you can't believe in yourself. That's what I want to offer." For a moment, she said nothing, and I braced myself for rejection. But then she smiled, a small, genuine smile that softened her sharp edges. "You've got something here, James," she said. "I'll give you the initial funding to get started, but I expect results." Relief and gratitude washed over me, and I nodded. "You won't regret it." With Evelyn's support, things began to move quickly. I rented a small office space, hired a team of like-minded individuals, and started building the program from the ground up. We designed workshops, mentorship pairings, and community events, all aimed at helping men find clarity and confidence after life setbacks. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of activity, but it wasn't without its challenges. There were moments of doubt, times when I questioned whether I was really making a difference. But then the emails started coming in, stories from men who had heard about the program and wanted to share their struggles. Each one reminded me why I was doing this. Meanwhile, whispers of Anna and Mark's relationship troubles began to reach me. Victor, ever the bearer of juicy updates, relayed the news with a mixture of schadenfreude and caution. "Word is, they're already fighting," he said one evening over beers. "Apparently, Mark isn't quite the knight in shining armor she thought he was." I shrugged, focusing on my drink. "Not my problem." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Really? No part of you wants to gloat, even just a little?" "Maybe," I admitted. "But what good would it do? I've got bigger things to focus on." And I meant it. The program was becoming my anchor, giving me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Each day, I saw men walk through the doors carrying the weight of their pain, and each day, I watched them take steps toward healing. One man, a recent widower named Tom, stood out. He joined one of our workshops reluctantly, his grief evident in every slouched posture and quiet response. But over time, he began to open up, sharing his story and connecting with others who understood his pain. "This place has given me hope," he told me one day, his voice thick with emotion. I didn't think I'd ever feel that again. Hearing those words was like fuel to my fire. Every success story, every small victory, reaffirmed that I was on the right path. One afternoon, as I reviewed plans for an upcoming event, I received an email from Fiona, Mark's sister. She wrote about how disgusted she was by her brother's actions and how much she admired what I was doing. "You're turning something awful into something beautiful," she wrote. "If you ever need help, I'm here." Her words stayed with me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about building something bigger than myself, something that could outlast the pain and betrayal. That night, as I locked up the office and stepped into the cool evening air, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in months. The hurt was still there, but it no longer defined me. I was moving forward, one purposeful step at a time. It had been weeks since I'd spoken to Anna or Mark. Their absence, once a source of pain, now felt like a necessary void, a quiet space where I could finally hear my own thoughts. The program was gaining traction, and every day brought new challenges and triumphs. Still, some wounds refused to heal entirely. That's why Fiona's email caught me off guard. I hadn't spoken to her much since the betrayal. Fiona, Mark's younger sister, had always been kind and supportive, but I hadn't expected her to reach out after everything. Her message was straightforward yet heartfelt, an acknowledgement of the hurt her brother and Anna had caused and an offer to help with my program. "You've shown so much strength, James," she wrote. "Turning this into something positive is inspiring. If you ever need support, I'm here." I wasn't sure how to feel at first. Part of me wanted to keep my distance from anything connected to Mark, but another part of me appreciated Fiona's gesture. After some thought, I decided to reply. "Thank you for reaching out, Fiona. I appreciate your kind words and your offer to help. Let's talk. I'd love to hear your thoughts." We met a few days later at a quiet cafe downtown. Fiona looked nervous, her hands fidgeting with the edge of her scarf as she sipped her coffee. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to." I shrugged, offering a small smile. "I figured if anyone understands how complicated this is, it's you." She nodded, her expression somber. "I'm so sorry for what Mark and Anna did to you. It was wrong, and I've told them as much. Mark and I haven't been on good terms since." Hearing that stirred something inside me, an odd mixture of validation and sadness. I didn't want Fiona to suffer because of her brother's choices, but knowing she had my back meant more than I expected. "I appreciate that," I said, "but honestly, I'm focused on moving forward. The program has been a lifeline for me, and I want to use it to help others find their footing after setbacks." Fiona's face lit up, her nervous energy shifting into enthusiasm. "That's why I wanted to meet. I think what you're doing is incredible, and I'd love to be part of it. You could use your story as an example. Show people how to rise above betrayal and build something meaningful." Her suggestion gave me pause. I had been careful about how much of my personal life I shared publicly. On one hand, using my story could make the program more relatable. On the other hand, it felt risky, like opening a door I wasn't sure I wanted to walk through. "I'll think about it," I said finally. Fiona nodded, seeming to understand my hesitation. "Whatever you decide, I'm here to help. Logistics, outreach, anything you need." Over the next few weeks, Fiona became an unexpected ally. She threw herself into the program, helping coordinate events and connect with potential sponsors. Her dedication was unwavering, and her perspective was invaluable. One afternoon, as we were finalizing plans for a workshop, Fiona mentioned something that caught me off guard. "By the way," she said, her tone careful, "Mark and Anna, they're not doing so great." I glanced up from my laptop, arching an eyebrow. "Oh." She hesitated before continuing. "Apparently, the honeymoon phase is over. They've been arguing a lot, and Mark's starting to see that Anna isn't exactly the perfect partner he thought she'd be." I wasn't sure how to feel about that. Part of me wanted to shrug it off. After all, their drama was no longer my concern. But another part of me couldn't help but feel a flicker of satisfaction. "They made their bed," I said simply, turning back to my screen. Fiona studied me for a moment, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "You're handling this better than most people would." I don't see the point in dwelling on it, I replied. I've got too much to focus on. And it was true. Every time I stepped into the office or saw the impact the program was having, it reminded me of why I was doing this. The betrayal that once felt like an anchor pulling me down was now the fuel propelling me forward. Still, Fiona's suggestion lingered in my mind. Sharing my story publicly was a gamble, but it could also be a powerful tool to connect with others. After a lot of thought, I decided to take the leap. At the next workshop, I opened up about my experience, not in a way that cast blame or sought pity, but as a way to illustrate resilience. I talked about the pain of betrayal, the struggle to rebuild, and the unexpected strength that came from turning adversity into purpose. The response was overwhelming. Men approached me afterward, sharing their own stories of heartbreak and loss, thanking me for showing them that it was possible to move forward. That took guts, Fiona said later, as we packed up for the night. I think you're going to help a lot of people with this. Her words stayed with me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about creating a space where others could find hope, healing, and a way forward. As I locked the office and stepped into the crisp evening air, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in months. The ghosts of betrayal were still there, but they no longer haunted me. They were just part of the story I was learning to tell, a story of strength, resilience, and the power of choosing to rise above. The family reunion had been marked on my calendar for weeks, a red circle staring back at me every time I flipped open my planner. I'd gone back and forth about whether I should attend. After all, it was bound to be awkward. But Fiona had been insistent. You need to do this, she said during one of our meetings. It's not just about facing them, it's about reclaiming your narrative. Show them who you've become. Her words resonated. This wasn't just about family politics or uncomfortable conversations. It was a chance to step into the spotlight, not as the man who had been betrayed, but as the man who had risen above it. When the day arrived, I dressed carefully, dark slacks, a crisp button-down, and a watch that gleamed under the light. I wanted to look composed, confident, and most importantly, untouchable. The reunion was being held at my aunt and uncle's estate, a sprawling property with manicured lawns and a gazebo that seemed tailor-made for uncomfortable encounters. As I parked my car and stepped onto the gravel driveway, I took a deep breath. I was ready. Inside, the house buzzed with conversation and laughter. Familiar faces greeted me, some with genuine warmth, others with the thin veneer of politeness that often accompanied family gatherings. I exchanged pleasantries, navigating the room like a diplomat at a summit. And then I saw them. Mark and Anna stood near the buffet table, their body language stiff and strained. Mark looked tired, his shirt slightly wrinkled, while Anna's forced smile barely masked the tension etched across her face. They noticed me almost immediately, and I saw the flicker of panic in Anna's eyes. "James," Mark said, his tone overly cheerful as he approached. "Good to see you." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "Mark." "Anna." Anna shifted uncomfortably, her gaze darting to the floor. "Hi, James," she murmured. I didn't linger. "Excuse me," I said, brushing past them toward Fiona, who stood near the center of the room, her smile both reassuring and conspiratorial. "You're doing great," she whispered as I joined her. "Ready for your big moment?" I nodded, the weight of the moment settling over me. This was it. The opportunity to take control of the narrative and show everyone that I was more than the man who had been betrayed. When the chatter began to lull, my uncle clinked his glass to get everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue with the festivities, James has something he'd like to share." All eyes turned to me as I stepped forward, my heart pounding in my chest. I glanced around the room, taking in the mix of curiosity, skepticism, and support. My gaze lingered briefly on Mark and Anna before I began. "Thank you, Uncle Richard," I said, my voice steady. "And thank you all for being here. Family has always been important to me, and while the past year has been challenging, it's also been transformative." I paused, letting the words settle. Today, I'm proud to announce the launch of a program I've been working on, a mentorship initiative for men navigating personal setbacks. It's called Rebuild, and its goal is to provide resources, community, and guidance for those who feel lost after life's challenges. There was a murmur of interest, and I pressed on. This idea was born out of my own experiences, times when I felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me and I didn't know how to move forward. I've learned that setbacks, no matter how painful, can be the foundation for something stronger. My eyes swept across the room, pausing briefly on Mark and Anna. I'm not here to dwell on the past or assign blame. I'm here to share what I've learned and to show that it's possible to turn pain into purpose. The room was silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. I could see the discomfort on Anna's face, the way she shifted from foot to foot, and the tension in Mark's jaw. But I also saw something else: respect, admiration, and perhaps even regret. As I stepped back, Fiona was the first to applaud, her enthusiasm infectious. Soon, the room erupted into applause, and a few people even came over to shake my hand and congratulate me. "That was incredible," Fiona said later as we stood by the drink table. "You owned that moment." "It felt good," I admitted, a small smile tugging at my lips, like I finally got to rewrite the story. Mark and Anna didn't approach me again, though I noticed them leave earlier than most. As they slipped out the door, I felt a sense of closure. They had made their choices, and I had made mine. This wasn't about revenge. It was about showing them, and myself, that I could rise above. By the end of the night, as the crowd began to thin and the house quieted, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The family reunion, once a source of anxiety, had become a turning point. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And this was only the beginning. The launch of Rebuild was a milestone I had envisioned for months. Every sleepless night, every strategic meeting, and every ounce of energy I had poured into the program had led to this day. As I walked into the rented event space, buzzing with activity and filled with rows of chairs facing a modest stage, a wave of nervous anticipation washed over me. The room was packed with supporters, colleagues, and even a few journalists who had caught wind of the initiative. Fiona had done an incredible job managing logistics, ensuring every detail was perfect. A sleek banner hung above the stage, emblazoned with the program's motto, "Turning setbacks into strength." As I stood backstage, reviewing my speech for the 100th time, Fiona appeared beside me, her clipboard in hand. "It's a full house," she said with a grin. "You ready?" I nodded, though my heart was pounding. Ready as I'll ever be. She gave my arm a reassuring squeeze. "You've got this." When it was time, I stepped onto the stage to a round of applause. The bright lights temporarily blinded me, but as my eyes adjusted, I took in the sea of faces staring back at me, some expectant, others curious, but all attentive. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice steady. "Thank you for being here tonight. This moment is the culmination of a journey that started in pain but has led to purpose." I paused, letting the room settle. Rebuild isn't just a program. It's a lifeline for men who feel lost after life setbacks. It's a space where they can find strength in their struggles and redefine their purpose. As I spoke, I shared pieces of my own story, not as a tale of betrayal, but as an example of resilience. I talked about how setbacks could become stepping stones and how support could make all the difference in navigating life's challenges. The room was silent, hanging on every word. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. As I stepped off the stage, a few attendees approached me, their faces lit with hope and gratitude. "Your story really resonated with me," one man said, shaking my hand. "I've been struggling to find my way after a divorce, and this program feels like exactly what I need." Hearing that was everything. It wasn't just about launching a program. It was about creating a space where people could heal and grow. As the evening continued, Fiona introduced me to potential partners and donors, each conversation fueling my determination. But then, amidst the crowd, I spotted a familiar face I hadn't expected to see: Mark. He looked disheveled, his suit wrinkled and his expression weary. For a moment, I thought about turning away, pretending I hadn't seen him. But before I could decide, he approached me. "James," he said, his voice low, "can we talk?" I studied him, noting the tension in his posture and the faint shadow of regret in his eyes. "What do you want, Mark?" I asked, keeping my tone even. He hesitated. glancing around as if unsure how to begin. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I know I messed up, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to say it. His words were unexpected, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to lash out, to remind him of the pain he had caused. But another part of me, the part that had been working toward growth and healing, knew that anger wouldn't change the past. I appreciate that, I said finally. But apologies don't erase actions. I've moved on. Mark, you should too. He nodded, his shoulders slumping slightly. I'm trying. That's why I came tonight. I thought maybe this program could help me figure things out. His admission caught me off guard. Mark, the man who had betrayed me, was now seeking guidance from the program I had built. It was almost poetic. If you're serious about changing, I said, meeting his gaze, then show up, do the work, but don't expect me to hold your hand. I understand, he said quietly. Thank you. As he walked away, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Closure, perhaps, or the faintest glimmer of vindication. Mark's presence wasn't about me anymore. It was about him confronting his own demons, just as I had confronted mine. The night ended on a high note, with attendees leaving inspired and eager to get involved. As Fiona and I packed up, she turned to me with a proud smile. You did it, she said. This was incredible. Not just me, I replied. This was a team effort. And it's just the beginning. As we stepped outside into the cool night air, I felt a profound sense of peace. The launch of Rebuild wasn't just a milestone. It was a testament to how far I had come. The pain of betrayal had become the foundation for something meaningful, something that would outlast the hurt and continue to grow. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The road hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready for whatever came next. The weeks following the program's launch were a whirlwind of activity and growth. Rebuild gained momentum faster than I could have anticipated, with new participants signing up daily and sponsors reaching out to offer support. Each morning, as I walked into the office, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, a stark contrast to the emptiness I had felt only months earlier. Fiona had become an integral part of the program, her organizational skills and relentless enthusiasm helping to keep everything on track. She handled outreach with a level of efficiency that amazed me, and her ability to connect with people was unparalleled. You've built something incredible here, James, she said one afternoon as we reviewed applications for new mentors. But this is just the beginning. I nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. She was right. This wasn't just a program. It was a movement, a beacon for those searching for hope and direction. As Rebuild flourished, so did I. I found myself rediscovering parts of me that I had buried during my marriage. The adventurous spirit, the confidence, the belief that I was capable of achieving great things. It was as if the pieces of my life were finally falling into place. But not everyone was thriving. Whispers about Anna had begun to surface, filtering through mutual friends and family. Fiona, ever the bearer of uncomfortable truths, brought it up one evening as we worked late in the office. Anna reached out to me, she said, her tone cautious. I looked up from my laptop, surprised. What did she want? She wanted to know how you were doing, Fiona replied, her expression unreadable. And she said she regrets what happened. I leaned back in my chair, a mix of emotions swirling within me. Regret. It was a word I hadn't associated with Anna since the day she walked away. But now, hearing it, I felt nothing but indifference. She made her choices, I said after a moment. And I've made mine. Fiona nodded, her eyes studying me. You've really moved on, haven't you? I have, I said simply, because holding on to the past doesn't serve me anymore. And it was true. For so long, I had let the pain of Anna's betrayal define me. But now, I saw it as just one chapter in a much larger story. A story of growth, resilience, and newfound purpose. That growth extended to every aspect of my life. I started taking better care of myself, prioritizing my physical and mental health in ways I hadn't before. Morning runs became a ritual, a time to clear my mind and focus on the day ahead. I even found myself experimenting in the kitchen, rediscovering the joy of cooking meals from scratch. One evening, as I stood in the kitchen chopping vegetables for a stir-fry, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from Evelyn Harris, the philanthropist who had believed in my vision from the start. "James, I've been following Rebuild's progress, and I'm so impressed. Let's catch up soon. I have some ideas for expanding the program." I smiled, her words filling me with pride. Evelyn's support had been instrumental in getting Rebuild off the ground, and her continued investment in its success meant the world to me. We scheduled a meeting for the following week, and I couldn't help but feel excited about what the future held. But amidst all the progress, there was still one unexpected development: Mark. Since the launch, he had attended several sessions at Rebuild, blending into the group like any other participant. At first, I wasn't sure how to feel about it. Seeing him there was a constant reminder of the betrayal, but it was also proof that the program was making a difference. One afternoon, after a particularly impactful workshop, Mark approached me as the room emptied. "James," he said hesitantly, his hands shoved into his pockets, "I just wanted to thank you for letting me be part of this." I studied him, searching for any hint of insincerity, but all I saw was a man trying to rebuild his life. "This program is for anyone who's ready to put in the work," I said evenly. "If that's you, then welcome." He nodded, a flicker of gratitude crossing his face. "I mean it. I've learned a lot. About myself, about what I've done, and about what I need to do to be better." His words didn't erase the past, but they did offer a small sense of closure. I wasn't interested in rekindling a friendship, but I could respect the effort he was making to change. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to focus on the future. Rebuild expanded into new cities, with satellite programs sprouting up in communities across the state. Evelyn's guidance proved invaluable, and our partnership grew into something more. An unspoken connection that hinted at the possibility of a new chapter in my personal life. One evening, as we reviewed plans for a fundraising gala, Evelyn leaned over and said, "You've come so far, James. I hope you're proud of yourself." I met her gaze, a warm smile spreading across my face. "I am," I said, "and I'm just getting started." The James who had once doubted his worth, who had been defined by betrayal and heartbreak, was gone. In his place was someone stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace whatever the future held. The email came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing updates on Rebuild's expansion, when the notification pinged on my laptop. The subject line read, "Congratulations, James. You've been nominated for the National Leadership Award." I stared at the screen, rereading the words to make sure I hadn't misunderstood. The National Leadership Award was a prestigious honor given to individuals who had demonstrated exceptional dedication to making a difference in their communities. To even be considered was surreal. "Fiona," I called, my voice louder than intended. She appeared in the doorway a moment later, clipboard in hand and an eyebrow raised. "What's with the shouting?" I spun the laptop around to face her, unable to keep the grin off my face. "Look at this." Her eyes scanned the email, and a smile spread across her face. "James, this is amazing. You deserve it." The days leading up to the awards ceremony were a whirlwind of preparation and reflection. I couldn't help but think back to where I had been just a year ago, lost, heartbroken, and uncertain about my future. To go from that to standing on the brink of national recognition felt like a testament to how far I had come. The ceremony was held in a grand hall, filled with luminaries from various fields. Evelyn accompanied me as my guest, her presence both grounding and encouraging. As we found our seats near the front, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of nervousness. This wasn't just about me, it was about everyone who had been part of Rebuild's journey. When my name was called, the applause was deafening. I walked to the stage, my heart pounding, and accepted the award from none other than Fiona, who had been chosen to present it. "Tonight, we celebrate James," Fiona said, her voice steady and warm. "A man who turned personal pain into a purpose that has touched countless lives. His journey reminds us all that resilience is not just about surviving, it's about thriving." Her words resonated deeply, and as I took the microphone, I glanced out at the audience. My gaze briefly landed on Anna, seated near the back. She looked beautiful as always, but there was something in her eyes, a mixture of regret and longing, that didn't match the woman I once knew. "Thank you," I began, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. "This award isn't just for me. It's for everyone who believed in the power of second chances." Rebuild was born from a moment of heartbreak, but it has grown into something far greater than I could have imagined. It's a reminder that even in our darkest times, we have the strength to create light. The applause that followed was overwhelming, and as I stepped off the stage, Evelyn greeted me with a hug. "You did it," she said, her eyes shining. "You've turned your story into something extraordinary." As the night unfolded, I mingled with guests, sharing stories and ideas for the future. At one point, Mark approached me, looking more composed than I'd seen him in months. "Congratulations," he said, his tone genuine. "You've done something incredible here." "Thanks, Mark," I replied, keeping my response neutral. "I've been coming to the sessions," he continued, "and they've helped. I wanted to say thank you." I nodded, acknowledging his words without offering more than necessary. Mark's journey was his own, and while I appreciated his gratitude, I wasn't ready to extend anything beyond polite civility. Later that evening, as I stepped outside for some air, Anna appeared beside me. Her expression was hesitant, and for a moment, we stood in silence, the cool night air wrapping around us. "You've come a long way," she said finally, her voice soft. "I'm proud of you." I turned to face her, my gaze steady. "Thank you. I've worked hard to get here." She hesitated, as if weighing her next words carefully. "I made a mistake, James. Leaving you. It's the biggest regret of my life." Her admission hung in the air, heavy with unspoken emotions. A part of me wanted to feel vindicated, to revel in the realization that she now understood the weight of her choices. But another part of me, the part that had grown and healed, felt nothing but closure. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said, my tone even. "But I've moved on, Anna. I wish you the best, but my life isn't about looking back anymore." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, understanding that the door she had closed was no longer open. As the evening wound down, Evelyn joined me on the balcony, her presence a welcome contrast to the heaviness of my encounter with Anna. "Thinking about the future?" she asked, her tone light. "Always," I replied with a smile. "Well," she said, raising her glass, "here's to what's next." I clinked my glass against hers, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The past would always be a part of me, but it no longer defined me. The recognition I had received tonight wasn't just an acknowledgement of my work. It was a symbol of how far I had come. And as I looked out at the city lights, I knew one thing for certain. The best was yet to come. The days following the awards ceremony felt like the start of a new chapter, not just for Rebuild, but for me personally. The recognition had brought more attention to the program, with emails pouring in from people eager to participate, volunteer, or donate. It was overwhelming in the best way, a reminder of how far we'd come. Evelyn and I met often during this time, brainstorming ways to expand Rebuild's reach. Her insights were invaluable, her ability to see the bigger picture complementing my focus on the details. But it wasn't just her professional input that stood out, it was her presence. Steady, thoughtful, and grounding. One evening, after a particularly productive meeting, she invited me to her home for dinner. It was a simple gesture, but as I stood in her beautifully lit kitchen, watching her slice vegetables while we talked about everything from work to favorite childhood memories, I realized how easy it was to be around her. There was no pretense, no tension, just two people enjoying each other's company. "I can't believe you've never tried Ethiopian food," she said, laughing as she set the table. "We're fixing that tonight." "Well, I trust your judgment," I replied, taking in the warm, inviting atmosphere she had created. "You haven't steered me wrong yet." As the evening unfolded, I found myself opening up to her in a way I hadn't with anyone since Anna. I told her about the early days of my marriage, the slow unraveling that I hadn't fully recognized until it was too late, and the moments of self-doubt that still crept in from time to time. "You've been through a lot," she said softly, her eyes full of understanding. but it's clear you've come out stronger. I nodded, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't expected. Thanks to people like you, honestly. You believed in me when I wasn't sure I could believe in myself. Her smile was warm, but there was something else in her gaze, a spark of something unspoken. I didn't press it, letting the moment linger before shifting the conversation back to lighter topics. Meanwhile, Rebuild continued to thrive. Fiona had taken the lead on organizing a series of community events, and the response was incredible. One event in particular, a father-son bonding workshop, stood out. Seeing families come together, finding strength in their connections, was deeply fulfilling. But the biggest surprise came at the next family gathering. I hadn't been sure about attending, but Fiona convinced me. You can't hide from them forever, she teased. Besides, it's a chance to show them how well you're doing. The gathering was held at my parents' house, a familiar setting filled with the laughter and chatter of relatives catching up. I greeted everyone with genuine warmth, feeling more confident and at ease than I had in years. Mark was there, of course. He approached me cautiously, his demeanor subdued. "Hey, James," he said, extending a hand. "Thanks for letting me be part of the program. It's really helped me see things differently." I shook his hand, keeping my tone neutral. "I'm glad it's been helpful." Mark's efforts to change were evident, and while I appreciated his sincerity, I knew our relationship would never return to what it once was. Some bridges were better left as they were, crossed but not rebuilt. Anna, however, kept her distance. I caught her watching me a few times, her expression a mix of longing and regret. But I felt nothing toward her anymore, no anger or sadness. Just a quiet indifference that spoke volumes about how much I had grown. As the evening wound down, I gave a brief speech, thanking everyone for their support and sharing updates on Rebuild success. I spoke about forgiveness and second chances, not as an olive branch to anyone in particular, but as a reflection of the values I had come to embrace. "We can't always control what happens to us," I said, my voice steady, "but we can control how we respond, how we grow, and how we move forward." Rebuild isn't just a program, it's a philosophy, one that's shaped not only my work but my life. The applause that followed was warm and genuine, and for the first time at a family gathering, I felt truly seen. Not as the man who had been betrayed, but as the man who had risen above it. As I left that night, Evelyn was waiting for me in the driveway. She had agreed to meet me there after her own commitments, and the sight of her leaning against her car brought an unexpected smile to my face. "How'd it go?" she asked as I approached. "Better than I expected," I admitted. "It felt good." She nodded, her smile widening. "That's because you've done the work, James. You've earned this." As we stood there under the stars, I felt a sense of clarity and peace that had eluded me for so long. My journey wasn't over, but it was no longer defined by the pain of the past. With Rebuild thriving, supportive relationships surrounding me, and the possibility of something deeper with Evelyn, I was finally stepping into a new beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just hopeful, I was excited. The Rebuild Gala was the culmination of everything I had worked toward over the past year. Held in a stunning venue downtown, the event was a celebration of the program's success and a fundraiser to fuel its continued expansion. I stood in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by supporters, colleagues, and participants whose lives had been touched by our work. The air buzzed with energy and optimism, a far cry from the uncertainty I had felt when this journey began. As guests mingled, Fiona flitted around the room like a master conductor, ensuring everything ran smoothly. Evelyn arrived shortly after, her presence as striking as ever. She wore a deep emerald dress that seemed to command attention, but it was the warmth in her smile that steadied me as she approached. "You've outdone yourself, James," she said, her voice soft yet firm. "This is incredible." "Thank you," I replied, feeling a swell of pride. "I couldn't have done it without you." Her eyes softened, but before either of us could say more, a voice over the microphone interrupted. It was Fiona, signaling the start of the night's program. I took a deep breath and made my way to the stage. The applause was immediate as I stepped behind the podium. Looking out at the sea of faces, I saw people who had been there from the beginning. Victor, my family, and even a few rebuild participants who had come full circle in their journeys. I also saw Anna and Mark near the back of the room, their presence a quiet reminder of how far I had come. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice steady. "Tonight is not just a celebration of rebuild. It's a testament to the power of resilience and community. A year ago, this was just an idea born out of my own struggles. But today, it's a thriving program that has touched countless lives." As I spoke, I shared stories of men who had found strength through rebuild, men who had overcome loss, betrayal, and self-doubt to rediscover their purpose. Each story was a reminder that setbacks didn't define us. Our responses did. The highlight of the evening came when Evelyn took the stage to present a special award. "James," she said, her voice clear and confident, "this is for your unwavering dedication, not just to this program, but to the people it serves. Your journey has inspired all of us, and it's an honor to recognize your leadership and vision." She handed me the award, a sleek glass sculpture that sparkled under the lights. The applause that followed was thunderous, but it was Evelyn's proud smile that stayed with me. After the program, guests approached me with congratulations, sharing their excitement about Rebuild's future. Among them was Mark. He looked composed, even humbled, as he extended his hand. "Congratulations, James," he said. "You deserve this." "Thank you, Mark," I replied, my tone neutral but cordial. There was a moment of silence before he added, "I've been attending more sessions. It's helped me see things more clearly. I just want you to know that I'm trying to be better." His words hung in the air, a quiet acknowledgement of the past and a step toward his own redemption. I nodded, offering a small but genuine smile. "Keep at it. Growth takes time." Anna, however, stayed on the sidelines. I caught her watching me a few times, her expression unreadable. But I felt no need to approach her, no lingering desire to address what was long behind me. My life had moved forward, and there was no room for the weight of her regret. As the evening wound down, Evelyn found me by the bar, holding 2 glasses of champagne. She handed me one, her smile tinged with something deeper than professional admiration. "To rising above," she said, raising her glass. "And moving forward," I replied, clinking mine against hers. The connection between us had grown undeniable, but it wasn't something I felt the need to rush. For now, her presence was enough, a symbol of the life I was building, filled with people who uplifted and inspired me. When the gala ended and the guests trickled out, I lingered in the empty ballroom, taking in the quiet aftermath of the night. The banners, the stage, the empty glasses, they were all reminders of how far I had come. From the man who had been blindsided and broken, I had transformed into someone stronger, more focused, and undeniably free. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, the city lights sparkled in the distance, a reflection of the possibilities ahead. The betrayal that had once defined me was now just a chapter in my story, a chapter that had given way to something far greater. Surrounded by a network of supporters, a thriving program, and a burgeoning connection with Evelyn, I felt ready to embrace the future. My journey wasn't over, but I no longer feared what lay ahead. With purpose guiding me and hope lighting the way, I walked into the night, confident that the best was yet to come.